That's right.
And
That's
so
right,
we
we
were
didn't.
here the week before.
Yeah, that's right. You weren't here the week before. Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started here. It's a little bit after 9 o'clock. I've got 9:02. It just flipped right on over. I want us to go ahead and get started. I want to be able to cover a little bit this morning in the book of 1 Timothy. We're in chapter 3, and we've been looking at the qualifications of an elder. And my plan is to be able to finish this up and move on into some of the qualifications and the role, the work of a deacon as well. So I hope that you've enjoyed that, and I hope that you will enjoy that. We're going to finish this up. This actually begins kind of a new quarter right now. I'm taking the rest of this quarter to finish up 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. I've spent more time in 1 Timothy. It's the bigger of the books. The more content is in this letter. But we will cover 2 Timothy and Titus as well for the next 13 weeks or so, right? So we'll finish that up. Well, if you haven't turned over there, go ahead and turn over to chapter 3. We talked about the qualifications of an elder. We talked about how he is above reproach, the husband of one wife, temperate, sensible, respectable, hospitable, and able to teach. If you remember last week, those three over there, I guess 2 weeks ago now, because we wasn't in here last week. Those three on the side, I didn't have them up on the board, but we did cover them as well. Just a couple things to get us going. When we talk about being hospitable, this is where that elder, that really, it's almost like when you're talking about hospitality, you can't help but include his family. It's not just him that's hospitable, but really his family is hospitable. And the idea is that he's hospitable to people who are strangers, people that he doesn't know. It's easy to be hospitable to people you love, and you have something in common with them. You bring them right into your home. Everybody's relaxed and comfortable. But to be hospitable to strangers, to people you don't know, that's a little bit more difficult, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, that's just me personally. You think about, somebody's coming over to my house. We don't even know them, and so you want them. What do you say when they come in? Come on, make yourself feel at home, right? Well, that's the idea. Is he is hospitable. His family is hospitable to people who are strangers. This was a key qualification that I think that Paul had something in mind when he wrote it. I think about Paul traveling to all these churches all over the land, and how important it would be for him as he's going into those cities to have a place to stay. And he wanted to say, these men, I just feel like it's kind of personal. I need them to be hospitable to me as well, when I'm going into those places to stay. And so I just think about the actual context of him writing that word. However, that applies to today as well. I have seen, and you have seen probably as well, just great hospitality within the church. I've stayed with families and with elders and deacons and ministers and members all over this great nation, from doing campaigns and gospel meetings and projects all over our country. And it's so wonderful. It feels so good to be able to go and stay with somebody, and they just make you feel so at home. There was one time we were doing a gospel meeting in Leavenworth, Kansas. And we planned to preach the entire week. We'd probably come in on a Saturday. The gospel meeting was going to start Sunday and go through Friday or something like that, right? Well, a horrible snowstorm comes through, ice storm, and so we were not able to kick off. We had to cancel the gospel meeting. We really did. Had to cancel the gospel meeting for the first few days at least. Like Saturday or Sunday, the church didn't get to meet. That's a horrible situation. And it was like March, but March in Kansas, you can get some horrible snowstorms come through. So anyway, we stayed with this elder. I honestly can't even remember his name right now, but we stayed with him and his wife, and they were just so good to us. Actually, when I pulled up, we were living in Denver at the time, and when I pulled up, I drove all the way from Denver to Leavenworth, Kansas, which is just basically I-70 all the way east, right? And for some reason in my truck, the heater was not working. It was horrible. Horrible. Like I could not get, it would blow air, but it would not get hot. And it was kind of icing and everything, and just the windshield would be frosted over. And it was just a horrible situation. So I pull up to this elder's house that we were staying with, and he happened to be a mechanic. That was wonderful. And I told him what was going on. It turned out that underneath the dash, there was something that came unplugged. Oh! And he went, bink, and it immediately started working again. But to me, that's hospitality. You know, that's caring for somebody. And we got to get to know, we were snowed in for a few days. We got to get to know that elder and his wife, played cards with them, and just they were so good to us. I'll never forget those moments. I'll never forget those times where you get to know somebody, you love them, you know? That's being hospitable. And I know I spent more time on that, but I feel like I rushed through it last 2 weeks ago. Being able to teach. This is a key one, and I think I mentioned it 2 weeks ago as well. This does not mean that this elder has to be able to teach publicly, okay? A lot of times we think of someone, he needs to be a good orator. He needs to be able to speak well-organized thoughts and have this charismatic, that's not what this is talking about. Being able to teach is that he's able to relate to somebody else the gospel. That's what I think of. And it doesn't matter if he's doing that in a public way, being able to speak, in a public setting, or just one-on-one with another individual. And I've known probably more elders who are better at doing one-on-one studies than they are at doing public speaking. You know, that's just the way it is. I've known some good public speaking elders for sure, but I've seen more of them being able to teach on the more one-on-one setting. So that's a wonderful qualification to think about. Someone asked me one time, buddy, so-and-so, he's such a good man and he meets all these qualifications, but I've never heard him teach a public class. Too bad he's not qualified. And I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, look at his kids. Has he taught his kids? Then he's able to teach. He's able to teach. He's done a good job. He taught his kids. He teaches people. He teaches just in his example. That's being able to teach, and so don't get hung up on, he's got to be able to teach in a public way. I don't like that at all. But anyway, any questions or anything before we move on? We're going to get some new qualifications this morning right now. Anything at all? Okay, well, let's look at this next little bit. 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 3 says that this man is not addicted to wine or pugnacious, but considerate, peaceable, and free from the love of money. That's verse 3. And so there are some qualifications that are mentioned here that we ought to go through here. First of all, it says that he's not addicted to wine. It's funny, the young adult class is starting a new quarter right now, and they're hitting some different topics. One of the topics they're going to talk about is addiction, and I had a good conversation about people that can be addicted to multiple things. Right? Addiction. You could be addicted to anything if you really wanted to be addicted to it. And we had decided, this is us really mulling it over in our own minds. This past week, we had decided that. Anything that would keep you from serving the Lord or taking care of your family I would consider as an addiction. Okay, so you could be addicted to work. You could work so much that you're not spending quality time with your family. That's an addiction. You could be obviously addicted to drugs. You could be addicted to food. Most of us are. But the interesting thing about food is that food is one of those things that you actually do need. You need food. You don't need crack cocaine. You see the difference between, and most days, you see the difference. So when somebody is maybe addicted to food, and food is a problem for them, that we have to remember they actually do need food, and there's a difference between someone being addicted to food and being addicted to crack cocaine. That's a hard thing to figure out. Yes, ma'am.
An addiction is an obsession.
An obsession.
Not a necessity.
Yes, that's right.
And
An
you
obsession.
can be obsessed with food.
Yes, that's right.
That's not the necessity, and that's where the difference in addiction is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a really good point. An obsession. So when it says that he's not obsessed or addicted to wine, we need to remember that wine was a common beverage, like water is used today. We probably, all of us don't drink enough water anyway. I've challenged myself in times past to try to drink a gallon of water a day. That is hard to do. Let me tell you, man, that's difficult. I can't hardly do that. But anyway, that's the way that wine was used. So the point was not to abstain from wine, which was widely used with meals during this context. The passage means that this elder is not addicted to really anything for that matter. He doesn't need to be addicted to anything that would be this obsession, an addiction to pornography, to social media, to television, drugs, food, video, whatever, anything, wine, drugs, anything you want to put in that. He does not need to be addicted to that. Anything that would keep him from being able to do that work, okay? So that's one thing that I wanted to point out for sure. So some people say, well, then does that mean that elder can drink wine? Oh my goodness, that opens up such a can of worms. So drunkenness is drinking wine is not condemned in the scriptures. Drunkenness is. That's, to me, if you're drunk, then you're obsessed with it, right? You want more and more and more and more of it. You become addicted to it. I do think you could make a wonderful argument, and this is the reason that I would abstain from alcoholic beverages. In our culture in America, alcohol is looked down upon as being something that's associated with the party life, and that's not an elder. And so you could make the argument that an elder needs to abstain from it, and really Christians should abstain from alcoholic beverages just because it is in our culture associated with the party life, and it looks bad. And so, listen, that's people judging, and I don't like people judging, but that I can understand that, and that's the reason that I would abstain from it as well. Yes.
Evidently, Timothy was abstaining from wine because if he hadn't been abstaining from wine, not taking it, then Paul wouldn't have told him take a little wine for your stomach.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Infirmities.
Yeah. Yes, John.
And the judging goes both ways on that.
It sure does, doesn't it?
Because when we see somebody, it almost reminds me back of when the Pharisees would draw those squares.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They said, oh, we shouldn't get drunk, so let's not even let it touch our lips.
Yes, that's right.
And so when someone sees, I mean, they might be buying that bottle of wine to maybe make pound cake or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But anyways, we see somebody with alcohol and we start
Yeah.
judging them.
That's right.
And it's not always a party thing. A lot of people would sit down at a nice dinner and drink a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Personally, I can't smell it or I get sick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And back to that that piggybacks really well with what Jim was saying just a moment ago. So I can totally understand the idea of saying, well, I'm going to use, especially with Timothy, it's obvious. Timothy's using wine for medicinal purposes, any kind of alcoholic beverage. I've actually taken, I use whiskey. If I've got a terrible cold, cold medicine today raises my blood pressure and makes me feel horrible. It really does. It does really bad for Kira. But in times that we've had a horrible cold or just snotty or whatever, we've used whiskey to do that. She grew up, her dad was from Wisconsin and grew up Lutheran, and they used that kind of thing. They used her great grandmother, who lived to be 96 years old, would use blackberry brandy when you had a terrible cold. They would give you that kind of thing. So I can understand that. I really can. But remember, the text says he's not addicted to those things. I can go my rest of my life without it, and I would be fine with it. And I'm hoping you would be able to do the same thing.
There's a good book, Raccoon John Smith. Restoration.
Uh-huh.
They,
Yes, that's right.
1700s when, the church started coming about.
Uh-huh.
And, that's one thing they paid preachers with, was,
With
whiskey.
whiskey. Yeah. I'm going to put that into my next package. Y'all disregard. Let's scratch that from the record, okay? I'm joking. Raccoon John Smith, hadn't heard that in a long time. That was an old time preacher in the Restoration movement during the 1800s. I'm gonna start calling myself Raccoon Alex Mills. That'll be anyway. All right. So the next one is that he's not pugnacious. This term refers to a man who is not a brawler. Do you see the correlation between somebody who is that a raccoon right there? Yeah, I see one right there. You see the correlation between somebody that is maybe addicted to wine and drinks alcohol and somebody who's a brawler. I mean, we understand that in our culture, don't we? That those two things go hand in hand quite often. But he does not need to be a brawler, a fighter, or easily confrontational. Okay, that's harder. Okay, that's a harder one. I'm a young man, and there have been times in my life, if you were to come to me, and want to talk to me and tell me something, there's been times where I easily get defensive. It's something I'm working on, and I hope you'll be patient with me while I'm working on that, okay? That's something I'm working on. But I think an elder needs to be somebody who's not so easily confrontational. He's not going to jump up and be so defensive, not pugnacious. That's a really good one. All right, so he gives some more qualifications right here. He is to be considerate. This is the idea of being gentle, one who is not self-willed. He's not one that's going to say, it's got to be my way or the highway. He looks at a situation and says, I need to consider, that's the word here, consider every aspect. I need to consider how this person will feel or this person will feel if this decision is made. Okay? So he's considerate. He's not looking at it from just one perspective. He looks at it multifaceted to see how everyone would be affected by this decision. Trust me, your elders here at North Heights have considered that throughout this pandemic. How can we be considerate to every single person if we have different views on different things? And that is hard to do. Hard to do. Then, again, this goes hand in hand with it, right? They're peaceable. Elders should not be quarrelsome or by nature have any kind of strife and division, even among themselves or among the church or among the community. They're peaceable. Some people they're just combative, aren't they? People have just this combative attitude. They cause trouble wherever they are. Let me tell you something. I've served with an elder who was installed as an elder and he was at another church and was an elder there. And there was some trouble. And he left that church and he came over and started worshiping with us. And it wasn't long before they installed him. And guess what? He caused trouble. And it wasn't long till he left there and went somewhere else to serve as an elder. That's not a good thing. That's toxic. I've seen that within the church. And that is a horrible situation. And we need to be careful of that. We need people that are peaceable. They're not causing trouble wherever they are. If trouble follows you, you may be trouble. That's the way I say it. I don't know. They bring peace and they bring harmony and no trouble. The last one here is that he's free from the love of money. He doesn't base everything, every decision he makes upon money or on if it's in the budget or not. And I'm thankful. Our elders look at it from that perspective here at North Heights too. It's not necessarily, the word budget actually is not in the scriptures, but the principle of being responsible with your money is. That's all throughout. You consider the cost. You consider a field that you might buy. That idea, he's budgeting is what they're doing. They're looking at their finances. And so this elder who we look to is going to say, I don't consider money the most important thing. He uses money, but it's not the driving force in his life. He's not addicted to making and spending or saving money at all times. That's a key thing. He's frugal, but he's liberal with his money at the same time. It's a hard balance between those two things, isn't it? That's a hard thing to do. Anyway, any questions or comments about these 5 qualifications we've looked at in verse 3? Okay, well, let's look at verses 4 through 5. We're going to look at both of these right here. All right, so it says, leading his own household well, having his children in submission with all dignity. It says, but if a man does not know how to lead his own household, how will he take care of the church of God? Okay, so there's two qualifications in these 2 verses. He leads his own household well, and his children are in submission. We're going to look at kind of both of them at the same time because I think they go hand in hand. And Paul gives us a little commentary. That's the parenthetical statement that's there. He leads his own household well. He's keeping his children under control and they are respectful of his leadership within the home. Those are priorities for an elder. He is somebody who has done well with his children. He does this with dignity, meaning that he is serious about his family's conduct. It's a true test for a good church leader. Not if he's rich or if he's successful or educated. Those things are not mentioned in the scriptures. The true test is how has he led and how has he managed his own home. And one who does a good job at home can be expected to probably do a good job within God's family, within the church. And that's what we look for. And so we're looking for his children being in submission to him. Well, people ask, and we'll get to this as well with qualifications of deacons. People ask, what if his children are unfaithful to him or unfaithful to the Lord? You know, and I don't know. I'll just tell you, I don't know. I can make an argument both ways. We've talked a little bit about this when we talk about a man whose wife maybe cheated on him. Is he still qualified to be an elder? I look at a man, and if his children are at home with him and they respect him and he's managing them and he's meeting all the other qualifications, then he isn't a good candidate to be an elder. If he has raised his children and they have been faithful, and then, I don't know, a year after they got out of his house, they ran off and did whatever they wanted. They squandered their way around, you know. That's questionable. I can understand that. I don't think it necessarily disqualifies him because people have free choice. That's what we were talking about right here earlier before class began. We were talking about people have free choice. And an elder he can have done everything right to raise his kids, and then his kids still, maybe later on, just rebel against him. And that happens. And let me tell you something, let's be forgiving to him. God raised Israel. God raised the children of God. And they were rebellious against him. And so let's be gracious to other people who struggle with their children as well, because God struggled with his. And you can do was God the perfect parent? Absolutely he was. Absolutely he was the perfect parent. He did nothing wrong. Is God still qualified to be God? Of course he is. And so let's be careful about judging a man too quickly because his children are unfaithful. For I'm not willing or ready to judge God either, because his children were unfaithful.
What about God's children today in the church?
Yeah.
He has people that are his children and have become his children, and yet they go and they're unfaithful to him, does that tear him down?
It does tear him down. It hurts him.
It hurts him.
And you have to think about too that it is does that disqualify Jesus' sacrifice upon the cross? No, it's still just as valuable. So
Well, I just think about like on Judgment Day, that man's not going to be judged for what his son chose to do as an adult.
that's right. Yeah, Ezekiel 18 talks about a man's sins as his own. You know, a father does not have to answer for his kids' sins, or the sons do not have to answer for their father's sins. You are answering for yourself. So, but at the same time, when you're looking for a man to lead, and you see somebody that, man, his children are well behaved and they're followers of God, that's no doubt in my mind. This man is qualified. If he's meeting all the other ones too. This man is qualified, and that's a good thing. You look for men like that. If he's constantly, here, let me give you this. If he's constantly struggling and working to try to get his children to do what's right, then let him continue to struggle and do that and not have to worry about trying to shepherd a whole church. Let him shepherd his own family. Don't try to pull him in another direction and have him serve the church. Let him take care of his family right now. He'll be too distracted and won't be able to do a good job taking care of the church if he's worried about his kids all the time. So look for men that don't have to worry about their kids all the time, because they'll be able to concentrate on worrying about you guys and me. You know, that's Alex. That's me. That's what I think anyway. Okay. Any questions about that little section right there?
Hey, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
A good point too is a child reaches adulthood at age 18.
Well, in our culture,
Yes. So most of the time, you know, you're going to have the children that are faithful, and when they get out on their own,
sure.
then they're adults. Even though they're always your children,
Yeah.
they're considered an adult, and
Yeah.
they have that free choice.
Yeah, that's right. The reason I said our culture is I've told my kids, I don't care how old you are, I'll still whoop you. You know, that's that's the idea. And I try to caution parents. A lot of times I've counseled parents that say, well, once they're 18, they're out of my house and I'm not going to worry about them anymore. Well, I would caution against that, and certainly don't tell your kids that. Once you're 18, you can do whatever you want. Well, good grief, you're just giving them a free pass to do that. No, you tell them you're going to whoop them till they're 30, you know. That's the way I feel about it anyway.
What about when they're 60?
Yeah, 60 years old. Sorry. That does make a good point.
I mean, they're always your babies.
yeah.
You know, and you don't give them that free ride, but
And don't you know that I still want to be taught and parented by my parents today? I do. I want to. Now, there comes a point where it's a different kind of parenting. But I still look to my parents to guide me and help me and train me up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I'm still under training right now. I'm 41 years old, and I look to my parents to help me. And I think that's the way it should always be. I don't know. But our culture, that's why I said our culture. Our culture says, man, you're 18, go doing whatever you are free. And Christians need to be be wary of that. Stay away from that kind of mentality. Keep training your kids. I don't care how old they are. And tell them that you're going to keep training your kids. And that's a very important thing to do. Okay, good points. Let's keep going here. Verses 6 through 7. More qualifications here. Let's see, how many are there? 3 of them, I think, or 2. Let's see. Oh, 2 of them. Okay. So here it says that he is not a new convert, so that he will not become conceited and fall into the condemnation of the devil, and he must have a good reputation with those outside the church, so that he will not fall into the reproach and the snare of the devil. And I want you to notice this textual thing that's going on right here in this verse. He bookends it, these 2 qualifications, with the devil. Here he talks about the snare of the devil at the very end of it. The very beginning of it, he talks about the devil. And he says condemnation of the devil, right?
It's close.
Condemnation. of the devil. There we go. Yeah. So he bookends it. So notice what it is here. Not a new convert. Why? So he's not conceited. And what would happen if he's conceited? He might fall under the condemnation of the devil. Okay? And then he talks about has a good reputation with those outside the church so that he doesn't fall into the reproach and the snare of the devil. Okay? So he bookends these two things with the idea that the devil could interfere. So he's not a new convert because you want a man with experience. Being a Christian, since leaders are often attacked by Satan in many ways. I always tell my kids, Satan is not looking for people that he's already, got. He's not looking for. He's looking for people that are committed to Christ. And so he's working the hardest on you. He works the hardest on our elders. Think about it. If the devil could just get into our eldership at North Heights, what do you think? It would destroy us all. And so
Divide the church.
he could divide the church. And so he is working constantly. You better be praying for your elders. I hope you are. Because that devil is going after them hard, hard, hard. He wants to break them down and break them down. And so you want a man that's experienced, that has been attacked by Satan in many ways. Now, when Paul writes this, think about it. The church at Ephesus is not a very old church. Not a very old church. These are all, honestly, new converts. If you really think about it. What we would not consider not new converts. They've been Christians for maybe a few years. Just a few years. We think of not a new convert as saying, boy, that person's, they're a new convert. They've only been a Christian for a year or two. And they're new converts, When we compare it to the history of Christianity and the history maybe of our church here, we have people here in our church that have been Christians for 50 plus years. And so when you compare that person to somebody who's a new convert that's been a Christian for 2 years, that's not very long. Not very long at all. But in this context, when Paul is writing this is a young church. A young church. So a new convert maybe had only been a Christian for a little while. That's just an interesting point to bring up. But he's after them. He's after them. And notice that he says this. This is kind of an important thing to think about. He doesn't want him to become conceited because you could take a man who just became a Christian, you elevate him to a shepherd of the church. Look how good I've done in this thing called Christianity. Now they're putting me in charge of things. I'm a leader. I am an elder. I'm an overseer. And so he becomes conceited. It can happen. And if he becomes conceited, he becomes very much like the devil. That's why he says, so he does not become conceited and fall under, and really, literally, under the same condemnation of the devil. That's really what he's telling us here. He won't end up like the devil. Okay? Because he's conceited, just like the devil is. So he has a good reputation. So he has a good reputation within the church because he's not a new convert. He's been here for a while. And he has a good reputation outside the church. Look what he says. Must have a good reputation with those outside in the community. In the community. So he does not fall into reproach and the snare of the devil. Reproach and the snare of the devil. So they represent the church. Listen, our elders represent us. And really you all represent us, right? So everybody be on their best behavior in the community. Don't cuss out the checker at Kroger or Walmart and then try to invite them to church later. Gosh, be good, be friendly and helpful and have a good reputation within our community. We're trying to save people. We're trying to make a difference. And if you're going to act like a hoodlum out there, then it's going to do us no good at all. All right, so we want somebody that's got a good reputation as well. There are other qualifications that are mentioned outside of 1 Timothy. They're mentioned in the book of Titus, and we'll get there. But I'm not going to hit them right now. I don't want to get them right now because I wanted to just stay within our own text. However, it's just not an exhaustive list at all. You could add to it. We want the man to be honest. He should be honest. He should be kind. He should be loving. You could keep going and going and going and going about a list that of a type of a man that could fulfill this role as an elder, or pastor, a shepherd. But these qualifications are mentioned here. And note that these qualifications, except that of being a man and being married, are all qualities and characteristics that are subjective in nature. Okay? They're relative. Okay? And these are qualifications that we should all be trying to live up to. We should try to have a good, like I said, a good reputation within our community. We should be working on trying to be hospitable, temperate, considerate. Those are things, these are qualifications. Every person should be working towards those kind of things. But when we look for leaders, when we look for elders and shepherds, pastors, bishops, all those words that we've used to describe this role, these are the things that are mentioned here in 1 Timothy that we should be looking at. And we look to choose the best man for the job. But I want us to be cautious about saying, I'm going to make this list. I'm going to make this list of these things that this man needs to do based upon the scripture. And he better check off every last one of them. Because if he doesn't check off every last one of them, then he's unqualified. Well, he might be working on trying to be a little bit more hospitable. And in your opinion, he may not be as hospitable as you would like him to be. But then you don't know the times that he's invited somebody into his home. And so that it's subjective. So we got to be careful about not making a list and trying to check it off. He might be trying to work on certain aspects of his life still. And I hope he is. I hope he is. And just be gracious to those men that are serving in that capacity.
Hey, Alex?
Yes, ma'am.
Who decides on the qualifications?
Well, the Lord already has. It's written out right here in First Timothy. The Lord
I
decided on
mean,
it.
as you hear,
Well,
if you had to choose
all right.
an elder or deacon or...
So, all right. So I'll just give you a provocative answer. I'll just tell you, just very direct. I think that it's up to the preacher to teach these things and to identify men that hit these qualifications. The reason I say that is Paul is writing to Timothy, the preacher. He didn't write it to the other elders. He wrote it to Timothy to teach these things. As a matter of fact, he'll tell Titus, teach these things to the brethren. Tell them these things. So I think it falls under the umbrella of somebody who's the minister, the preacher, evangelist, to teach those things. And then the congregation should be able to say, okay, look, now he's taught us these things from the scriptures. We can identify those men that fall into that, and it's obvious to us. However, I think that it's a biblical principle for a congregation to choose among themselves men to serve. I don't see a principle of an I don't see a principle of a minister necessarily just picking them. I think he teaches, and I think he asks the congregation to look among themselves. And I say that based upon the way that the men in Acts chapter 6 were chosen to serve as deacons. The apostles asked for the congregation to look among themselves for men that were meeting those qualifications. So I like that principle. I've served with an eldership that chose its own elders. And that's a dangerous road. Because you can easily get a man that come from another church that caused trouble and then ends up at that church and he causes trouble there. And that's scary. I'd rather let the congregation choose. But the preacher has an obligation to teach what's in the scripture. And the congregation should be able to say, oh, look, these men meet that qualifications. Let's put them in as elders. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does fall heavily upon the preacher. But to me, I'd rather give it back to you guys and choose.
They
Yeah.
might not have had an opening since they became members here? Cause you're pretty new.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
But
that's
like
right.
when we've had an opening, they announce to the congregation for us to submit names of people
Yes, that's a
that
good
we
way to
think
do it.
would be good to
Except
the
your mom
elders.
does that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it. I really do. Submit names, and then all of those names are presented before the congregation that meet those qualifications.
You know, there's one thing a point I'd like to make about elders.
Mm-hmm.
I have the utmost respect for a good elder, but every elder that I've ever gotten to know one-on-one, sooner or later, I'd find out what his faults were.
Sure.
His shortcomings.
Yeah.
And so we can't expect the men that we ask to be elders to be perfect. And we expect them to be mature. And I'll tell you, you were talking about going into Kroger and acting right.
Mm-hmm.
A very important thing I think that you can tell about a man, if you find out how he's acting when he's in the workplace,
Yeah.
away from the church,
Sure.
away from everybody, and if that man is acting the way he should and doing what he should out there in the workplace 40, 50, 60 hours a week, then that's another one of those indicators to me that probably that man is either qualified or on his way to be qualified.
Yeah, that's right. Good stuff. Good stuff. Any questions or anything? We're almost done here. I'm not going to move on into the role and the qualifications of deacons just yet. That'll be just another thing. But I would encourage you to read through it. I've tried to tell you, read through the entire book as we're studying it. I think it's the best thing to do. It gets you in the Word of God. It'll take you 15 minutes, I think, to read the entire book. So I want to encourage you to do that at least once a week before we come and study. But especially next week, we're going to be looking at chapter 3, verses 8 through 13. Thank you so much for being here this morning.